Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Smart Outsourcing Talks. And I'm excited to welcome a guest who is known to turn firm friction into breakthrough leadership. So, Dave Len, welcome, Dave, to the show.
Hey, thank you, Manoj. It's great to see you. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, and today, it is a little different session. So what we are going to talk about, and the subject is your team isn't broken, your lenses might be. So how to coach yourself and others, so this is a little different session on coaching. So before we go ahead, let me just introduce Dave. So Dave is a founder of Grove and Grain Leadership, a leadership coaching and consulting practice where he helps small to mid market businesses owners, including accountants and finance leaders. He helps move past overwhelm and reconnect with their core purpose. He serves as an executive coach, a fractional COO, a keynote speaker, and has been widely recognized for his human first approach to transforming organizational dynamics. One of the ideas I most powerful is Dave's concept of the force of awesome, and that's what Dave we are going to talk about more. I was little intrigued with this force of awesome and the unique strengths each leader brings but often overlooks when stuck in reactivity or burnout. His coaching frameworks like listen and reflect and ask model have helped teams overcome tension through curiosity, care, and self-awareness. On the top of that, Dave is a sought after guest. His episode on the unique CPA podcast titled Harnessing Your Own Unique Force of Awesome resonated deeply with anyone looking to lead from authenticity, not just strategy. So, beyond work, Dave is known for blending reflections with action, encouraging leaders to tap into the inherent purpose and not just performance. So, Dave, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks, man. It's great to be here, and yeah, it's wonderful to get to experience being with you again. We got to meet
Yeah.
at Bridging the Gap. It was
Mm,
it was fun connecting with you there, and
mm,
looking forward to our conversation.
yeah. So, to start with, Dave, so let me just talk about a little, why do challenges in accounting firm often feels heavier than they are? You know, what's your experience around this?
Yeah, most people in life want to do a really good job,
Hmm,
right? We don't like letting people down typically. And my experience with CPAs, bookkeepers, accounting firm owners, people in the financial advising planning is that it's a high stakes
hmm,
environment. You
hmm,
got to get it right most of the time, or you feel like you need to get it right all
hmm,
the time. And so there's this lens that we have on that, hey, I must be perfect or I must do things perfectly. And so making sure that like that we've reduced as much risk from the equation as possible, and that is put forward into the operations of a business.
hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
And how perception, you speak keeping about you keep speaking about that. So how perception shapes whether leaders see as a team as a broken or they just experience that friction. So um, what does that perception have to do with broken teams?
Yeah. So I have two children. I'm gonna relate this to
Okay.
kids. I like to do that as much as possible because it kind of it lowers the barrier a little
Hmm,
bit. So I have an 11-year-old and I have a daughter that's actually turning 9
hmm,
later this week.
hmm,
Um, and they'll get in friction
hmm,
often,
hmm,
and they'll see a situation from one lens. From so my daughter will have it from her lens, my son will have it from his lens,
hmm,
and they're fighting at each other.
hmm.
Who's right? Who's wrong? And then if I have the luxury of actually getting to see what the situation and watch it, there's a third perspective coming in. And so that's part of this, is that we all enter into any sort of situation with a certain lens, perspective, values, vision, dreams, all those things that make us human.
Mm,
And when we have friction, it's typically because we haven't formed the right relationships with one another.
mm,
We don't have a deep sense of trust that, hey, you are actually fighting for my best possible good, and I am for you as well.
mm,
And so we don't have this environment or situation where we can directly be vulnerable and talk about
mm,
what it is that I'm seeing, how I'm seeing it, how I'm feeling, what am I thinking about it, what are the next steps, and then have a healthy dialogue and discourse to move
mm,
us forward.
mm. So what's the solution? Because both of them will feel that okay, I'm right,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a
Yeah.
deadlock, right?
There's not a one size fits all solution for this.
Mm,
But what I have seen work most is that this takes time and
mm,
takes intentionality
mm,
to be able to say, hey, we're going to be a team
mm,
that opens up our dialogue. When we feel conflict, we're going to name it,
mm,
and that we're going to talk about it. We're going to discourse about it. Now, if we don't have the time, let's just say we have a deadline or the meeting is running out of time or something along those lines, we need to be able to address that in a productive manner. Okay, hey, we don't have enough time in this meeting, but we are going to schedule a follow-up for us to address this head on.
mm,
That's typically what I've seen, is that the healthy teams, high performing teams, have that ability to be
mm,
able to pinpoint that they're having conflict, and then they actually address it
mm,
and they talk about it.
mm. Can you share some real life experience, when leaders misdiagnose their problem just because of the perspective or the lens which they were carrying?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had several leaders that view their team as not up to snuff or not performing to their expectations.
Mm,
And so they have this perspective that it's not going as well as it ought to be. And
mm,
typically it's been because the leader always sets the tone.
mm,
Always.
mm,
Right? What you allow is what you're gonna, like, what you tolerate is what's gonna be produced by your team, by your organization, by yourself.
mm,
And so oftentimes what we have to do is we have to actually, like, they misdiagnose it that, oh, this team is actually underperforming.
mm,
Well, most of the time it's the leader that hasn't been performing as a leader to set the expectations and the tone and
mm,
the cadence, the process, the system, and then of how the team is supposed to operate, the culture
mm,
that they're supposed to operate within.
mm,
And so that is like one of the most misdiagnosed problems. I would say this isn't just a work problem, business problem. This is a
mm,
societal problem.
mm,
Um,
mm,
we often point the finger at
mm,
other people.
mm,
We say, hey, let's get the speck out of your eye, but there's actually a log in your own eye
mm,
first that you must remove.
mm. And
So that's, yeah.
as a leader, you always feel okay, your team needs training, your team needs coaching, right? Now,
Mhm.
such scenarios, how do you convince the owner that, okay, before the team, you come first? So you need a coaching.
Yeah, yeah. And so the way I go about that type of a conversation
Mm,
is I enter into a coaching conversation with the leader first
mm,
and foremost.
mm,
Um, what makes this important to them?
mm,
Like, what type of impact are they trying to see if their team were to receive coaching?
mm,
How are they going to improve as their team improves?
mm,
Will they be able to, like, do they have a track record of being able to cultivate a team that's learning and growing and
mm,
developing?
mm,
And if they don't,
mm,
how are they going to build those skill sets?
mm, mm,
The other part about that is that I just use some data and
mm,
about this, is that,
mm,
when your team continues to grow, you
mm,
start to perform better.
mm,
But oftentimes you think that you have to put a cap on that because
mm,
you are the leader and therefore you must know all things, and that is a facade. Like, the there's a great saying of, be the most curious person in the room.
mm,
Some people like to say, be the dumbest person in the room. That makes a really great leader.
mm,
um, that they assume that, and so they open up with curiosity,
mm,
and allows them to learn and
mm.
create this developmental approach a
Yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah. We always say, this curiosity breeds innovation. Uh,
Hmm.
so that's the seed to everything. Tell me, Dave, in your experience, when you're coaching leaders, and I'm sure you would have faced such situations that um, where there is a change in the skill sets required, because as you scale your companies, so say for example you started with 10, 20 people, and then now you're growing to 50 people, right? Now
Oh
as a
yeah.
leader you require very different skill sets, and when you jump from 50 to 100 again, you need a shift in the skill sets. So
Correct.
how could leader manage this? How do they change the perspective every time?
Yeah. Yeah. A great thing to do in those situations is to really reflect back on what worked well for that last season.
Hmm.
So what are the strengths that you possess
Hmm.
that bring you life?
Hmm.
What are those things? But then you have to be able to reflect. And this is really important, I
Hmm.
find, for a lot of leaders, and
Hmm.
something that I'm starting to notice more and more of the need
Hmm.
is that reflection time,
Hmm.
downtime.
Hmm.
So not time working in the business, but time working on the business and on yourself,
Hmm.
to think through the hard questions of,
Hmm.
okay, what is needed from me in
Hmm.
this next season?
Hmm.
So if I'm looking at that 10, 15 person organization to 50, 60 person organization, now to 100 to 250, or whatever that's going to
Hmm.
be,
Hmm.
that's going to require a different perspective, a different
Hmm.
skill set, and a
Hmm.
different approach
Hmm.
than the previous ones.
Hmm.
And so you really need to be able to have that space to really ask yourself,
Hmm.
okay, what skill sets have you seen that have worked in that next season?
Hmm.
But then this is great where a coach comes in, or having mentors. I always advise the people that I coach to have at
Hmm.
least 1 to 3 mentors
Hmm.
that they can glean wisdom off of.
Hmm.
So I think those areas are really, really, really important to ask yourself,
Hmm.
hey, what worked for me in
Hmm.
this past season? Because what got me here is not going to get me there.
Hmm.
Now, what are the new things that I must learn?
Hmm.
And then the big question, which is super hard, what
Hmm.
must I unlearn
Hmm.
in order to move forward?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That makes
Is there
sense?
any, yeah, absolutely. Is there any reflection techniques that one can use? So how do you reflect? Because, many of the times you are into it. So, and as you rightly said,
Mhm.
for reflection, you should not be in the business, but you should be working for the business, right? So is there
Mhm.
any ways in which you can do a reflection exercise yourself?
Yeah, I think so. And this is where, again, intentionality comes into play, and having a rhythm of life.
Hmm.
So there's daily rhythms. So most of us, our brains are most plastic and working and dynamic right
Hmm.
when we wake up early morning,
Hmm.
and then right when we go to bed. But I highly suggest that people, when the early morning, that they don't look on their phone, they don't look at their emails, they don't do any type of work, but they really take an inventory of, okay, how am I feeling?
Hmm.
So what emotions are you feeling?
Hmm.
What are you thinking about the day to come? And
Hmm.
just to do a simple reflection on that.
Hmm.
If you only have 5 minutes,
Hmm.
doing that
Hmm.
will actually create new neural pathways in your brain that will
Okay.
provide new fuel for you to create new concepts and ideas moving you forward.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
at the end of the day,
Hmm.
reflecting on how you feel about, generally, how you feel about your day,
Hmm.
what what things that you did well, one
Hmm.
to three of those things,
Hmm.
and then doing a kind of a review for the next day.
Hmm.
What's going to be popping up tomorrow?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's a daily review,
Hmm.
daily exercise
Hmm.
rhythm. Then you go into a weekly one, where
Hmm.
you can go, and that takes a little bit more time. But in general, how did that week go for you? How did you feel?
Hmm.
What accomplishments did you achieve? And
Hmm.
then looking at the week ahead,
Hmm.
same thing. Like,
Hmm.
what are you reviewing on?
Hmm.
I also quarterly I suggest that people spend either a half day to a full day away just by themselves to really reflect on the quarter and then to get themselves ready for the next quarter.
Hmm.
And then when they go through annual planning, I really suggest people get away for 2 nights at least,
Hmm.
where they can really reflect on their bigger life and
Hmm.
the business, and then all the things that are at play. And so this
Hmm.
just scales into a different perspective. But this requires intentionality and it requires rhythm.
Hmm. I was reading once, Bill Gates, and I wrote, he was saying that, I think every 3 months or every 6 months, he took off one think week. So,
Mhm.
there is 1 week off just to think on the business, right? And I think these reflections are, extremely, extremely crucial, when you are scaling up. So, Dave, tell me that, how, um, most of the times, I mean, as human beings, everybody is emotional, right?
Mhm.
How do you play these emotions when it comes to influencing your firm culture, okay, or when you are incubating it, so how do you kind of balance that?
Yeah. Well, that requires a lot of emotional intelligence, relational intelligence,
Hmm.
and social intelligence in order for you to be able to cultivate that really well.
Hmm.
Um, First, what I like to share with my clients is that emotions are just data. They're transient data,
Okay.
snapshot in time of how you're feeling. It is not full truth. It
This is
is not like
I'm going to use this. This is an excellent definition. It's a transient data.
it's transient data. It's like right now, like
Yeah.
you and I right now, we're
Yeah.
feeling something,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so first and foremost, that that has a range
Hmm.
and it can change over
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
Now, what I think you're asking me is more on like the extreme sides of things.
Hmm.
Am I following that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when there's extreme emotions,
Hmm.
we tend to act in extreme ways depending on our nature and our nurture and our choices of how we show up.
Hmm.
Now, that could be productive and it can be unproductive. But
Hmm.
what it requires, and this
Hmm.
is where leadership really requires a high level of emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
as not just IQ, but EQ and relational intelligence to be able to handle
Hmm.
extreme emotions and that someone is feeling something really, really big.
Hmm.
And then to be able to discourse that in a way that's productive, not
Hmm.
only for the person that's feeling that extreme thing, but for the collective good of the
Hmm.
team.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? There might be times when there's an extreme emotion that
Hmm.
someone is feeling and the timing and space is inappropriate to address the extreme emotion right then and there.
Hmm.
But to be able to acknowledge it, name it.
Hmm.
Brene Brown has this great phrase that says "name it to tame it." I love that phrase.
Hmm.
It's super spot on.
Hmm.
But to be able to call it out and then say, "Hey, like right now is not the time and place for us to talk
Hmm.
about this," um, but then to also be empathetic and like I understand what you're feeling,
Hmm.
and then what kind of support do you need in
Hmm.
order for this to move forward in a productive manner.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've seen many teams either like what that does is that it just the acknowledgement, naming the high emotion just makes that person feel heard, seen, known,
Hmm.
understood, and that kind of levels it out in order for them to participate.
Hmm.
Sometimes though, they say, well, what I need is actually time, and they can can leave
Hmm. Hmm.
for that time. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to coaching, what is the right time when a founder or maybe leader should get into the coaching? So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
are
So
there any
when
triggers or something? So, is there
t-
any? Are there any
t-
triggers? When you those triggers
y-
would kind of lead to coaching.
yeah. Um, Usually it's when someone is facing, this is what I like to say, when someone is facing a skill set
Hmm.
mismatch,
Hmm.
or a perspective mismatch.
Hmm.
um, and that's often in life.
Hmm.
And so when someone ought to seek coaching is
Hmm.
really when, like, when they recognize that there's something inside of them that
Hmm.
they need to be able to dialogue or think through with someone else that
Hmm.
has a completely different perspective, to help them unlock their potential, unlock their perspective, and take new action towards the bigger objectives that they have.
Hmm.
So um, typically, when someone is motivated to change and transform the way that they show up in their business and in life,
Hmm.
that's a great spot for coaching. Coaching's all about transformation, all
Hmm.
about gaining new perspective and taking new action.
Hmm.
When someone is being called up by others of like, hey, I see this potential in you. They might not see it yet, but someone else sees it, and they are curious and motivated to learn more. That's a
Hmm.
great spot for coaching.
Hmm.
um, the way I also like to answer this is, when is not the place for coaching
Hmm.
is typically when someone feels lost and stuck in a place where they're quite stressed or overwhelmed or depressed.
Hmm.
So coaching sometimes gets confused or can seem like counseling in some ways, but I'm an International Coaching Federation credentialed coach,
Hmm.
and we are not psychologists, we are not psychiatrists, we're not therapists, we're not counselors.
Hmm.
But coaching is developed through a psychology lens.
Right.
And so when you're in those states, that's is probably not the most appropriate time and space for
Hmm.
coaching.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you must be doing a lot of coaching. So, generally, what are the signs with which leaders would come to you? Okay, and what are that first 3 or 4 questions you ask to them, so you get a perspective that okay,
Yeah.
he needs or he or she needs a coaching.
Yeah. So majority of the clients that I work with are seeking growth.
Okay.
It could be revenue growth, it could be team growth, it could be growth in skill set. They're not sure yet what that means from a quantitative financial perspective in their business,
Hmm.
but oftentimes that they're trying to do something different than what they've done
Hmm.
previously. But
Hmm.
that's hands down.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Now, when I get into a coaching conversation, my process is that with every single client that I have a complimentary coaching call with every potential client,
Hmm.
and I like to ask them about, well, tell me, like,
Hmm.
what are you curious about with coaching? Like, what's interesting to you about coaching?
Hmm.
um, and that can go in multiple ways. Some people are like, "Oh, this is exactly it." Others are, "You know what? I'm not sure, and I'm trying to learn what that is." I always try to ask them about, like, "Hey, well, tell me about your business. What role do you have in your business?
Hmm.
What do you hope for in your business?"
Hmm.
And then I also ask for them to share a little bit about your life.
Hmm.
What responsibilities and what do you hope for in your life?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I have a philosophy in coaching, and most coaches through ICF have this: is that we're coaching the whole person.
Hmm.
And so, Manoj, you have one role as the CEO of FinSmart, but you also have multiple other roles that you have in life,
Hmm.
and your business is one of those roles in your
Hmm.
life, not the other way around.
Well
And so, we need to have a conversation about that.
Very well said. It's an integrated things, right? You play multiple roles.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mm. So, Dave, coming to the next part of it is, I just wanted to, talk about friction. Friction that happens between the teams and in the organizations. Um, so what to do when when the conflict, you feel like you are stuck and it's a repetitive conversation between the leader and the teams. So how do you really get out of that repetitive conflicts?
Yeah. You know, there are multiple ways of getting about it, but first is awareness. You
Okay.
have to be aware that that conflict actually exists.
Hmm.
Most people are conflict avoidant.
Okay.
Like, we don't like the feeling of conflict.
Hmm.
I haven't met any human being that actually is like, oh, I really like conflict, unless there's something like kind of off. But first is just that awareness, like, hey, we are in a disagreement,
Hmm.
we're in a conflict. Now, if
Hmm.
it's a repetitive conflict,
Hmm.
that's another element. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
we seem to be going into the same loop over and over, and we again.
Hmm.
And that really requires someone to act courageously to call it out. Oftentimes, if it's repetitive conflict, it's
Hmm.
because there's a culture that is has allowed it to happen.
Hmm.
So, oh, this is the way that things have been done
Hmm.
before. And
Hmm.
there's, talking behind people's back and triangulating. Usually that happens when things like that happen.
Hmm.
So, first and foremost, you have to call it out, and someone has to act courageously to call it out.
Hmm.
Sometimes that is the actual leader, and other times that's someone just on the team being frustrated and realizing that they are so dissatisfied with the current status that they can
Hmm.
see a future that's different than that,
Hmm.
and they know that that's next step is to call it out.
Hmm. Hmm.
So first and foremost, you have to have that out, call
Hmm.
it out. Now,
Hmm.
this is where a lot of like differentiation will happen depending on the culture. Now, if a team has a decently healthy trust and relationships amongst the team members,
Hmm.
after someone calls it out, how do they respond to that calling out?
Hmm.
Do they have a conversation about it, or do they brush it off and move on?
Hmm.
So this is where this requires the leader of the team to
Hmm.
be able to empower the
Hmm.
team to be able to have conversations about the hard things.
Hmm.
What I try to coach my clients, and this is what more in the fractional COO or principal work that I do, is
Hmm.
I'm trying to get teams into a spot where they're basically, majority of the time, they're talking about their issues, the
Hmm.
problems that the business has.
Hmm.
And so they're trying to discourse about, okay, how are they going to prioritize their time, money, and energy
Hmm.
around solving the biggest problems for their business.
Hmm.
But that takes, in order to get to a place, that requires them to have deeper relationships with one another,
Hmm.
not in a way where they know all the ins and outs of their lives, but they understand how each person shows up to
Hmm.
the team. They know their strengths, they know their weaknesses, they know their blind spots,
Hmm.
and they're okay being vulnerable with one another about all of that because they trust that the team member and the team members are actually fighting for the best possible good for the team, for the business, and for each other.
And how do you make people ready, as you said, so because when your positives, negatives, blind spots, everything comes on the surface, right? So
Mhm, mhm.
most of the times the team goes into uh, kind of an either avoidance mode or maybe um, what I should say is a non-supportive, right? Or they don't agree to this. So how is there any framework through which you could unpack this
Yeah,
question, or what do you do?
sure. Yeah, there are a couple of frameworks that I like to use, and I differentiate depending on the team and
Hmm.
their maturity
Hmm.
in all this. So a couple frameworks. First, I like to use an assessment called the Five Voices.
Okay.
So personality assessment.
Hmm.
And what that does is actually provides each person and the team the personal leadership voice of a person.
Hmm.
And what it does, it provides people their own self-awareness of how they communicate and
Hmm.
what they like from other people in
Hmm.
communication and in relationships.
Hmm.
But then what's really powerful
Hmm.
is that it opens up of what's it like being on the other side of them.
Okay.
And so that creates a wonderful dialogue with the team of going, okay, so the five voices are pioneer, connector, guardian, creative, nurturer, and those have different voice orders.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if someone's a pioneer, they're the loudest voice.
Hmm.
They're most direct, most assertive. They
Hmm.
have no problem speaking their opinion.
Hmm.
Now, someone that's a nurturer,
Hmm.
they're the most quiet.
Hmm.
They are more reluctant to speak their opinion
Hmm.
than the pioneer.
Hmm.
So how do you have a healthy conversation with someone that's in those two different categories?
Hmm.
And so you have to be able to address that and be able to understand these things and create rules of engagement for people to be
Hmm.
able to talk.
mm,
So when I'm doing these types of team dynamics, when I'm doing like a debrief of everyone did this assessment and now we're talking as a team,
mm,
we will go and we'll have the nurturer speak up first and we'll address, hey, the person with the pioneer voice, we know you have opinions and ideas and thoughts. We know that you can share those things. We want to hear them, but first, we need to hear from other people, and
mm,
then you'll be able to dialogue on that.
mm,
That's a great framework for
mm,
people
mm,
to get their voices heard.
mm,
The other framework that I really love using is Patrick Lencioni's the five dysfunctions of a team,
mm,
and that's a great framework where it talks about inattention to results and the peer-to-peer accountability, lack of commitment, fear of conflict, and then the absence of trust as a pyramid, as a triangle.
mm,
And so when I talk about this with teams, is really that if you are expecting different results than
mm,
what you're currently getting, that it is typically because you don't have peer-to-peer accountability, there's a lack of commitment, you're having fear of conflict, and there's an absence of trust somewhere.
mm.
Oftentimes I'll get, no, we trust each other, we do this. No, no, no. I go, okay, well, show me how.
uh,
And we'll go through those dialogues,
mm,
and eventually you get to a spot where there's an aha moment of going,
mm,
oh, this process or this way that we show up or the way we make a decision is actually inhibiting our ability to hold each other accountable or our ability to address conflict.
mm,
Like we only have 45-minute meetings, but sometimes we need a 90-minute meeting in order for us to actually rumble with the
mm,
conflict a little bit longer.
mm,
Does it
mm.
Am I answering your question?
Yeah, absolutely. You're bang on. But how do you solve? Because when in a team and in a professional setup, a lot of time it happens that you tend to have a two different personality, one at home, one at at the professional life, and you kind of always have that kind of a gap. And when we are doing these kind of assessments, or we are just opening up, so a lot of people would resist in a way, or may remain quiet, or may not come out with the full transparency and stuff like that. So how do you handle that? Um,
Mhm.
because in a group setup it is little different, right? Because there are people, and people might not be comfortable talking. So how do you bridge this gap?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and one I'm super curious of the dynamics that you were just talking
Mm,
about. It's like,
mm,
why are we so different at home than at work? And yes,
mm,
there's a lot of societal norms associated with that.
mm,
But so what I always do is I work with the executive, the owner, the business owner, the
mm,
leader first,
mm,
and we're working together, coaching together. And there comes a moment in time where I will say, if we're going to bring this into the team, hey, you are the leader. Whatever you say, whatever you do sets the tone, sets the depth
mm,
at which everyone else will go to.
mm,
Now, this doesn't mean to share your deepest, darkest secrets with
mm,
your team,
mm,
but it requires someone to reflect on, well, what depth is going to be required for us to move in a healthy way forward,
mm,
right?
mm,
And so I often try to have the leaders speak up first.
mm,
Now, if I'm also facilitating a
mm,
team dynamics or team coaching in some way,
mm,
me as the coach, at the first time that we're all getting together, I'm the leader. I need to set the depth.
mm,
And so from that, I will share certain emotions, certain stories that creates that depth. One of the biggest things that gets in our way, our limiters, is our fears.
mm,
We all are afraid of something.
mm,
It's not just
mm,
spiders,
mm,
but we are afraid of certain things.
mm,
And so getting the level playing field is sometimes actually acknowledging some of the fears that you feel
mm,
about a certain situation or team dynamic.
mm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you deal with? Okay, before I go to that, another one.
Mhm.
Tell me in these kind of a conversations. So what is the role of an empathy? What is the kind of a level of empathy one requires to deal with such frictions or
Sure.
such situations? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, um, empathy is tricky because empathy is the ability to go to the depth with somebody
Hmm.
to understand what they're feeling and what they're thinking and going through.
Hmm.
Um, so, for instance, like this, um, I was actually faced with this last week.
Hmm.
Was the difference between sympathy and empathy,
Hmm.
and the difference was um, yeah, coaching a female client that was going through a really hard time that was associated with something that was personal to them that men we won't biologically be able to experience.
Hmm.
So my empathy is actually limited to be
Hmm.
able to be there to a certain depth. But my
Hmm.
sympathy can be curious
Hmm.
of wow, that sounds really difficult.
Hmm.
I understand difficult parts of that.
Hmm.
But and so what I think empathy is required to get you to the spot of I can understand parts of this
Hmm.
and here's how I'm with you in that.
Hmm.
Um, but it also requires us to acknowledge the limit of our empathy
Hmm.
in any situation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but tell me that how do you really play this role of or how even the leaders would play the role of being empathetic towards certain
Yeah.
situations. So is that
Yeah.
um, you need to consciously develop, or is there any method through which you can adopt that, or
Hmm.
or it is just ingrained? What do you feel
Well,
about?
it's both and it's both
Yeah.
and. Some people are naturally more empathetic than
Mm,
others.
mm,
But what I've learned is asking open-ended questions. So this goes back to that listen, reflect, ask
mm,
model.
mm,
Um, that I presented at Bridging the Gap, and that was taught
mm,
to me
mm,
at Intel.
mm,
But so listening with our whole selves, like
mm,
I'm listening to the words that you're saying, your body language, the
mm,
emotions that you might be feeling,
mm,
and I'm also listening to myself of what emotions am I feeling
mm,
as you are saying something to me,
mm, mm,
and reflecting back what you heard the other person say
mm,
and paraphrasing back so that
mm.
that person feels understood,
Okay.
right? This gives them the opportunity to be able to say, oh yeah, you heard me correctly, or you
Mm,
didn't hear me correctly,
mm,
or I didn't communicate the thing I
mm.
wanted to communicate effectively. So let
Okay.
me rephrase that for
Mm,
you. But
mm,
then asking a furthering question that's
mm,
open-ended
mm,
really opens up that space for that
mm,
person to be able to go a little bit
mm,
deeper or further with what they're trying to get after.
mm,
This isn't a yes no question, it's not
mm,
binary, and it's
mm,
not a leading question
mm.
where you already know the answer.
Give me one
Because
example.
um like let's say like you come um well let's go like what well, just give me like a challenge, one challenge that you have right now. Let's
Uh,
see if I can go there.
mm, so say for I mean, when you are scaling, there are a lot of challenges. So one of the challenges that um, to keep teams um, on their KPIs.
Mhm.
Though there are defined KPIs, but most of the time they are not being able to kind of present or uh, making sure that they are able to kind of show up on those KPIs.
Mm. Yeah,
So
so
so what
oh, go ahead.
happens is that many a times then they would say, hey, but I was doing this, or they bring some other problems and stuff like that. So one of the challenges that how we could actually train them to really focus on their KPIs and remove the nuisances that they have.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what I hear as a challenge is that you have KPIs for
Hmm.
certain people, and when
Hmm.
they come and give an update on the KPIs, they bring in other information, or
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
focusing on other things,
Yeah.
and that is creating a problem. Am I
Hmm.
hearing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna just like pause. In my mind, I already have like 2 to 3 solutions coming up.
Hmm.
And so if I ask a question, like here, I'm gonna just
Hmm.
divulge like this
Hmm.
is one of the solutions I have, is
Hmm.
that like send them a message ahead of time that you only want to hear
Hmm.
about the KPIs and nothing else. And
Okay.
so I
Hmm.
could ask a leading question is how have
Hmm.
you communicated
Hmm.
that you have the expectation
Hmm.
to of
Hmm.
only talking about KPIs?
Hmm.
Do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus
Hmm.
versus the question of what makes this important to you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does that make sense? There's
Yeah, it
the
makes sense.
difference between the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah. 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 So you are setting the tone before the discussion happens, right? So uh,
Hmm.
they all come prepared to just speak on those subjects.
Yeah, well, and so if we were going to continue on in this dialogue, I would want to ask you the question: what is important to you about only talking about KPIs?
Hmm. Hmm. So idea is that they should not lose focus day in day out when they are working, right? So because as you are scaling up, there'll be a lot of growth challenges that are there. But if you don't divulge, then you are kind of focused on that.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
and so if they're losing their focus on that, then it's
yeah,
deviating in some way, and
yeah,
so I'm hearing that's costing you like
hmm,
business something.
yeah,
How and how have you talked to your employees about the cost
hmm.
that this is having?
uh, maybe we have not done that.
Okay.
We have not quantified. Everybody knows that, okay, if we miss on this KPIs, we might miss on the opportunity, which could lead
Hmm.
to XYZ issues, and it could derail
Sure.
us and stuff like that. But we have not really quantified, saying that, hey, look, if you do not really focus on this, this is the kind of a cost that we are bearing.
Yeah. Okay. So you haven't done that yet, and so what have you done?
uh, So generally, we explain through the narrative that why it is important to be focused on the
Hmm.
KPIs, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then we say, if we do not synchronize it together, how it impacts others' work as well, because it is an interdependent things, right? So if one misses, other would also miss, and together as a whole organization will miss.
Mm. Mm. Okay. And so you've communicated that there's a waterfall effect, a
Cascading
downstream
effect, yeah,
effect.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where I'm going to take my coaching hat off just a little bit. And there's a great formula. So the Five Voices is run by an organization called Giant Worldwide, and
Hmm.
they provide a lot of visual tools.
Hmm.
One of their tools is called the change equation.
Okay.
The change equation is that change happens when dissatisfaction with the status quo multiplied a clear vision of the future
Hmm.
multiplied by natural next steps is
Hmm.
greater than the resistance.
Hmm.
And so one of those three elements
Hmm.
sounds like it could be out of whack
Hmm.
for that person. And
Hmm.
so that's a great place to look into of like, okay, how dissatisfied are they with the current status quo?
Hmm.
Do they actually see the vision? Can
Hmm.
they articulate that?
Hmm.
And then do they know those natural next steps of how to get back to what you're asking for them?
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
All right. I know we went off on a little detour. Yeah.
No, but that's, yeah. I get the point, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. And so you in your introduction, there was a lot to talk about the force of awesomeness. Maybe you can just tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The force of awesome. This came to me. I'm a I'm a 40-year-old guy that I like to surf, skate, snowboard. My body hurts a lot more now that
Mm,
I'm older, but I mean, awesome is
mm,
just a part of my language. It's always been a part of my language.
mm,
I deeply believe that every single human being on this planet
mm,
is created uniquely and has unique gifts,
mm,
and when they recognize what those unique gifts are and their
mm,
unique purposes,
mm,
that is a truly a force of awesome.
mm,
And so that's I I love saying that to people, like, you are a force of awesome. Let's
mm,
go be forces of awesome together.
mm,
Let's go do awesome things.
mm,
um I really, really do believe that I'm really convicted of this, that in this time in our world's history, like, people need to feel that more.
mm,
I would love for more people to recognize that, to
mm,
experience that, and to live that out,
mm,
and not just to live it out in isolation, but live it out connected to other people.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
And one of the way to go to awesomeness is, of course, you should not be feeling exhaustion, or you should not be exhausted, frustrated. So
Mhm.
is there any technique to uh, kind of prevent leaders from being exhausted? Because of course entrepreneurship is difficult, right? So
Yes.
so what's your advice to the entrepreneurs or professionals?
Yes. There's a few things that I want to say on that. First is understand your values.
Hmm.
First, like, what are your personal values that you want to live by?
Hmm.
And those change. That's first season, and it changes depending on where you're at in life.
Hmm.
Um, and then you need to be able to put boundaries up.
Hmm.
So you can't give what you don't possess.
Hmm.
So you need to be able to create boundaries that allow you the time and space for
Hmm.
you to get filled up, get your cup filled,
Hmm. Hmm.
however that is, whatever that looks like.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but we also are glued. Like, right now, I have a monitor here, I have another monitor here. There's an iPhone there. Like, we are having a constant distraction of things all the time.
Hmm.
And so, how are you separating yourself from those things and creating a boundary so that you can actually go and spend time with yourself to
Hmm.
understand what that force of awesome actually is?
Hmm.
So earlier in our conversation, we talked about the daily rhythms, we talked about weekly rhythms, quarterly, and we talked about annual. You mentioned Bill Gates and his
Hmm.
week off, and yeah, absolutely. And there are so many business legends, as well as like world leader legends, and as well as like missionaries and a lot of other people that spent a ton of time creating boundaries
Hmm.
so that were able to receive what they need to receive to be at their best, so that they can go and give it their best to other people.
Hmm. Hmm. And how
Right.
do you create these boundaries?
Yeah. Well, first you have to, so the values is extremely important to be able to understand, like, what is it that you care about and what you don't care about. The
Hmm.
next step in that is really looking at your tendencies.
Hmm.
So how do you butt up against certain decisions, and how do you react to certain things?
Hmm.
Then looking at, so the way I like to look at it is that, okay, what do you want in your life?
Hmm.
Well, and then work your way backwards.
Hmm. Hmm.
And how do you create somewhat of a structure and a plan and a process for your life?
Hmm.
Okay, that's your life, and that includes your business.
Hmm.
It includes also, if you're married, it includes a spouse. If you have children, it includes your relationship with your children,
Hmm.
all those things.
Hmm.
And then, okay, what's your mission and vision for your business?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Then you have to work through the plan, your business plan.
Hmm.
And that this is where the friction really is that most business leaders that I come across have a hard time of letting go
Hmm.
and being able to create that boundary in space, because they feel that
Hmm.
if I take time and space from my business to
Hmm.
focus on me,
Hmm.
one, it might feel selfish.
Hmm.
Two, it the ship is going to go down, that
mm,
that the team is not going to be able to operate without them as effectively.
mm,
And so there's a lot of negative voices or
mm,
lies that impede people from doing that.
mm,
So first, they need to examine those things. Then
mm,
we need to look at your schedule and calendars.
mm,
What does your daily calendar look like? What does your weekly calendar look like? What does each month,
mm,
quarter, and annual look like? Then
mm,
we need to actually plan and schedule, get things on the calendar.
mm,
I believe it's Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt has a saying that what gets scheduled gets done,
mm.
and
Yeah.
it's true. So
Mm, mm,
yeah,
mm,
you have to go through those certain disciplines.
mm,
But then there's also another aspect of this, of looking at different gears of operating. It's
mm,
another cool tool from
mm,
Giant Worldwide, of that we have multiple gears of operating. We have first gear, which is refresh mode. We have second gear, which is connect mode.
mm,
Third gear, which is social mode.
mm,
Fourth gear, which is task mode, and fifth gear, which is focus mode.
mm,
Just like we have to go through those gears in order to get to fifth gear, but we can't always operate at fifth gear all the time. We have to downshift
mm,
in
mm,
order for us to operate well. So
mm,
throughout our day, throughout our week, throughout our quarter, our year, how are we shifting our gears and allowing us those spaces?
mm,
Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about the values. So generally these values builds the culture, right?
Hmm.
So how do you build a culture in a growing organization? Because everybody comes from a different walks of life, and especially when you are hiring like a mid managers or senior level people, they all come from different. This is how do you integrate or assimilate them into the organizational culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. First and foremost, you have to have company values.
Hmm.
I recommend 3 to 5, and I recommend less is more.
Hmm.
So the clients and teams, companies I try to work
Hmm.
with, that I
Hmm.
try to get them down to 3.
Hmm.
Most of our brains can't remember more than 3 things.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
But this isn't just like saying like I value creativity. But
Hmm.
what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
So they have to go with like the definition of what creativity means for the context of that organization. This
Hmm.
is how this is going to be experienced,
Hmm.
how creativity is going to be experienced.
Hmm.
So then you have to go through like, okay, how are you actually setting those expectations, and talking about the values?
Hmm.
And this is where it's really good to be able to have conversations with every single employee and down through the organization.
Hmm.
So starting at the executive leadership team, then on down, of how are and assessing each other. How do you live in these values?
Hmm.
Is it plus, minus? Is it hot, cold?
Hmm.
Whatever you're going to do for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then that's just values. That's one part of the culture. Then you have to go into the, like, you understand the role that you're in. You
Hmm.
have to be able to desire the role, and
Hmm.
then you have to have the capabilities to fulfill the role.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like those are elements at play that you have to have a constant conversation on, to be
Hmm.
able to assess like that you actually are living out those values,
Hmm.
and that the
Hmm.
people that are in the roles to be able to fulfill those values
Hmm.
are in alignment.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And today, a lot of times, the people, I mean, the firm owners work with the global team or maybe the offshore team and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Now, how do you bring this offshore team or a global team? How do you build culture within them? Because
Yeah,
they might not meet you face to face. It's always
totally.
they see on the screens only. So they are at a
Yeah.
distance. So how do you kind of assimilate with them and build the cultural values in them?
Mhm. The same way. So
Hmm.
they're an extension of the team.
Hmm. Hmm.
That you have a certain set of values and operating procedures that you're going to run your business by,
Hmm.
and that expectation is going to whoever you're going to outsource some work to.
Hmm.
And so being able to have a healthy conversation of, hey, so when someone is going through that outsource model,
Hmm.
um, there's an interview process.
Hmm.
You don't just get any, like, you don't just get the whoever. So like if your company, you're like, I'm gonna pick this one person and your client has no say on that. That's
mm,
not
mm.
how the culture works.
Yeah.
And so the client must have an interview process with the person that's going to be an extension of their team,
Mm,
or the team that's going to be an extension of their organization,
mm,
to be able to assess culturally, are they aligned
mm,
in that way.
mm, 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 mm. And how do you build? So one is the assessment, that is the first time, and then how do you build that continuously with the remote teams?
Yeah. So it's an ongoing dialogue
Mm,
with remote teams, and this is where, like, I've worked with global teams for over 15, almost 20 years. Is
mm,
that you have to have regular connection touch points. And
mm,
this isn't, I mean, there has to be a time to talk about work, but there
mm,
also has to be time to be able to check in of
mm,
how everyone's showing up. So, like, what
mm,
cultural attributes are you bringing into the team dynamic?
mm,
So there's
mm,
product meetings, there's those types of meetings, but then there are times when you need to have more
mm,
of a cultural conversation.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think 60 minutes has just flied with you, Dave. I don't even, I just see my clock. It's
Yeah,
almost,
yeah.
it was absolutely, great conversation. So we come to the last question as to, do you have any tips for, accounting firm owners, in sense of, how do they look the entire coaching stuff, and what are your models, how do you engage with the firm owners or
Mhm.
leadership team?
Yeah, yeah. So um if anyone is feeling like that what got them there is not going to get them to the next stage in their
Hmm,
business or in life,
hmm,
if they feel like they have been a high performer, high achiever, but lately they just felt a little stuck, but no one really else knows that on their
hmm,
team or their business,
hmm,
and they don't feel like they can express that openly to people in their organization. They
hmm,
need a safe person, a safe place to be able to express these things, so
hmm,
that then they can turn around and be able to do something a little bit more productive with their organization and their team.
hmm.
That's a great spot for coaching.
Okay.
Now, the process with coaching is that we're going to coach from the inside out. Like, you start with yourself, and then you work with your
Hmm,
family, then you work with your team, your organization, community. That process intentionally,
hmm,
like I talked about, like work is part of your life, not the other way around.
hmm,
But what I require every single one of my clients is that they must create a big business goal. So
hmm,
that is something that is materially going to move the business forward.
hmm,
It's something that excites you, but
hmm,
probably scares you a little bit because you don't know how it's going to actually shape out.
hmm, hmm,
And then a leadership development goal, and that's essentially, what leader do I need to become in order for that big business goal to be realized? What
hmm,
skill sets do I need
hmm,
to learn? What things do I need to unlearn in order for that to move forward?
hmm, hmm,
And I work through a five phased approach in that, where we first establish a contract, understand your aspirational goals. Then
hmm,
we work in your current reality, like understanding where how did you get to this spot? Where are you? How much energy, motivation, resources do you have to move yourself
hmm,
forward? And
hmm,
then what does that actually vision of the future look like?
hmm, hmm,
And so we work a lot of spend a lot of time figuring that out. And then we
hmm,
build a plan together.
hmm,
And this is where we co-create a plan of doing the inner work that you must do to learn and unlearn, as well as the external work that you have to do with others in order to move things forward,
hmm,
and then executing the plan,
hmm,
moving along the way.
hmm,
And no plan is 100% perfect. And so you constantly are learning
hmm,
and you're retooling along the way.
hmm,
And then you conclude
hmm,
the plan and the engagement. But what I like to say is that, for me as a coach, I'm coaching someone, leading them from behind and a little to the side. So
hmm,
if you can see that,
hmm,
I can't see exactly, Manoj, your world and
hmm,
what you see, what you feel.
hmm,
But as a coach, I'm going to use inquiry to ask you to paint the picture for me of
hmm,
what you see out in front, so
hmm,
that I can help provide the observations, the mirrors, the perspective
hmm.
that would be most useful to you to move you forward in that plan and that goal.
Fantastic analogy, Dave. this is
Thank you.
this is just perfect. Yeah. All
Thank you.
right. So thank you so much. It was really a lovely session, and I mean, If given a chance, I would just go for another 1 hour. Okay.
Yeah, well, we're gonna be with each other in Las Vegas in October, so
Absolutely. So
let's do it.
I'm going to
Let's do it.
pick your brain again in when we meet in Tweet Connect. And
Yes.
thank you for your valuable time, and thank you for being a guest at Smart Outsourcing Talks. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Take care.
Mm.